All right. You are looking at a 1970s Varsity, Schwinn Varsity, made in Chicago, USA. I've been stripping these things down since the 1970s. When I was a little kid, we needed some of the parts off of these to make our little 20-inch Schwinn Typhoons, the miniature cantilever frame bikes, the Stingray frames. We had to modify them to work better for BMXing. And what we used to do is we would try to find this smaller frame. People call this an 18-inch or a 19-inch Schwinn Varsity frame. You get that measurement by measuring from here to here. It's under 19 inches. It's over 18 inches. So most of the ones that you'll find are 20-inch frames, and the head tube will be much taller. What's neat about this smaller Varsity frame, it's going to be really cool for what we're going to use this frame for momentarily, but just to stay in the 70s briefly here. Same size head tube as a 20-inch bike. So what you could do back then was you would take this skinny blade fork. They had a tube fork as well, and I have a few of those here. The tube ones are stronger, but you basically used whatever you could find. So you take this thin blade fork, and you would put that on a 20-inch frame, which I happen to have a version here. A little bit different mod on this one. You guys have seen this before. See this here, I put a 26-inch fork on here. So it's the same sort of theory. This is a different build with different philosophy that I'm not going to get into right now. But the point is, that size fork will fit in this small frame, and what that does, it lifts the front wheel up enough to where now if you look at the crank arms, these are 165 millimeter crank arms on here, which is also what you have on here. So what you would do is, you'd find one of these Varsities, you'd find one, you just find one. They weren't easy to find, the small ones. You would take the fork off, you'd pull this bottom bracket apart with the crank set, you'd pull this ring and the outer sprocket off, and you would have this. You got a 39 inner sprocket on there, 165 millimeter diamond crank. You keep these pedals, put all these pedals and that fork on your 20-inch frame, and now you can ride like if you're a bigger person. Like if because you're once you're getting to 12, 13 years old, you're starting to become the size of a small adult. Some people are bigger, and that's what you were doing. And so we were running BMX bikes, well, little Schwinns on BMX trails with that fork, this crank set, the Varsity pedals, still with ape hangers and a banana seat. Now, some kids right away, they get rid of the banana seat and they'd be running their Schwinn saddle, triangle saddle off the Varsity as well. And it just brings back a lot of memories. Now, that's not what we're doing here. We're going to strip this frame down, and I'm going to build a clunker. Now, I haven't decided yet whether I'm going to run it geared or if I'm just going to run a coaster brake, because I have a set of wheels that are coaster brake wheels, aluminum wheels. To do that, I'm going to have to dimple these chainstays. And I have a tool here that my buddy Chad, you guys know him as Tick, Mr. Tick Bicycle Products, Tick Oneer. He made this really cool tool, which is a chainstay dimpler. I have a video on it. I will try to remember to put that in the description below on how this works. And what that'll do is it'll allow you to dimple the round tubing here on the chainstays to fit a fatter tire. Really interesting thing, and a great memory of being a little kid, 13 years old or so, in the bike shop. I remember the big kids talking about the problem of trying to fit a fatter tire into a Varsity frame. And we're going all the way back to 1980, Now, on the East Coast, we didn't have the term clunker at that time. I never heard it, but everybody I knew, myself included, when I was 8 years old, I was already modifying bicycles. So that's what people were doing. And you would have to do it the old-fashioned way, which I've done, and I've shown before. There's picture folders on it. You can go to my Bikeopolis page on Facebook. On Instagram, it's OG Bikeopolis. Sound it out. You'll find it. There's some videos in there, and you strip your frame down. Keep the spacing here good with a block of wood or a threaded rod or whatever. Lay this on some wood and then just basically hammer on the frame, man. I'd lay a pipe in there and pound on it. And it's not fun, it's not super easy, but you can figure it out. You're going to mess with the frame, then you got to put string on the head tube and run it back to both sides and bend your frame around so you can get that rear wheel. It's a clunking ain't easy. That's a phrase that exists for a reason. You got to figure this stuff out. So what I'm going to try to do in this video is pass along a little knowledge as I'm stripping this down and tell you the good parts to keep, the stuff that you don't really need anymore. And yeah, so let me just go ahead and get started with that, I suppose. I'm going to do this the way that we did it as a kid. I never had a bike stand, still don't. So I work on something like this. I do have a large vise here that I can put this in that will make my life a little bit easier. But I want to do this the way I've always done it, which is the way I've been doing it since I was about 8 years old. And it's basic tools, man. Nothing super crazy with it. So with that, let's reach over here and see what I got. And of course, I don't have everything. Everything on this side is standard thread, and the other side, as far as the bottom bracket is concerned, is reverse thread. If I had been smarter, I would have had all the tools out already. Let me get some stuff together and I'll be right with you. All right, bear with me, man. I have not stripped a bike down in a little while. So a 15 millimeter wrench will work. You can have your Parker tools and all that, but I'm going to be using, for the most part, other than when I'm doing something bike specific like the chain. You know, obviously you need a chain braid tool, which I have. But I'm just using Craftsman here. No big deal. I do have to break the chain and get that off. I might as well do that real quick. Alright, hang on. Nothing's where it's supposed to be. Alright, just trying to find stuff. Let's go ahead and break this chain. There may be a master link on this, but I'm not going to go looking for it right now. I have a lot of these chains saved. I save everything because you just never know what you can use it for. A lot of bike parts can be used for other things. I'm telling you right now, it's already been one of those days. It's not going to get any better. And really, this is like long form. There's probably better ways to do this, but I told you it was reverse thread, and the first thing I did was go the wrong direction. You want to get your pedals off, and you want to pull this bottom bracket here. These bikes have so many good parts on them that you can use on your regular 20-inch Schwinns. So much of it's interchangeable. This is like the Chevy of the car world, right? So many parts from one Chevy will fit on another Chevy. These pedals, these reinforced road bike pedals, are great. They're fantastic, man. All right, we need a big crescent wrench here. The bearings in the bottom bracket and the headset are awesome. And they are all made in the USA, vintage steel. I would tell you, I am telling you that these bearings in these old bikes are better than, probably better than any of the bearings you're going to buy now, today. So if you can salvage these, and that's what you should be doing. It's not if you can, I'm telling you, that's what you need to do. And you never know what you're getting into, man, with this. No point in you watching me do this. Give me a moment, and I'll get right back to you. All right, today has been one of those days. I had to swap out 3 lock sets in this house today, and the first one I did was a nightmare, and I encountered things I never had to do before. Same thing just happened here. I've never had one of these be so hard to get off, and I'm at a WD-40, so I'm doing all this dry. So the next thing is you got to get these bearings out before you try to get the crank out. Yeah, it's all very dry in here. And this has never been touched, man. This set right here is still got the original. This has never been re-greased or opened since this came out of the factory. That's kind of rare. When you go to take this out, you got to make sure that the bearings in the race, which is what this is here, pop out of the other side. These don't want to do it. So I got to go in there and force them. There we go. If you don't get them to fall out of the race, you'll have a very hard time getting that to come out because it'll bind up on the bearing itself. So it's a little trick for you. Now this is pretty self-explanatory here. You'll pull these nuts, this steel, this is just there to keep the chain from falling off. That goes away. Then you have to put this in a vise, use a wrench on here, pull this cone nut off, and then you'll be able to separate these 2 sprockets here and put it all back together. You can figure out it's pretty straightforward stuff. So I guess we'll do that. We're just going to go ahead and disassemble this thing. I'm in a weird spot here because I'm not like everybody else with editing. I'm going to go ahead and... oh my God. All right, hang on. This is terrible. Okay, listen, I'm going to tell you right now, I want some of my frustration to come through here because one of the reasons why you guys haven't seen me doing bike builds in a while is because it is tedious. Tedious stuff. I don't enjoy tedious stuff. I hate it. It's a huge pet peeve of mine. And you need to understand that that's part of the process with working on old parts, trying to make them work in a way that they're not designed to work. My biggest frustration right now is that my tools aren't where they're supposed to be. That's how long it's been since I've been in here. What you just saw me doing is I'm trying to get this kickstand out. And typically you can use a pair of channel locks here and push in on this outer ring. There we go, that might work. Now, if it won't recess in enough for you to get that out, which this ain't doing, now you got to find something to put in there to push that down deeper. Behind the frame here. And again, it's tedious stuff here. It's very, very, very frustrating. I do not like this stuff. I'm just using the head of a screw here, and it's not going to work. I know what I got to use. Hang on. I don't know how much this anybody's really going to see. So in the past, I saved these little things I cut off when I'm removing brakes. Because I can use 2 hands with that. I can place that in there. There we go. And then that'll usually give me enough room to pull this little nub out. Usually, nothing on this bike so far is already, everything's been a hassle. You have to All right, so this little top hat nub thing here, you have to pull that out. It's just spring tension that holds it in place. What the problem I'm having is that everything is glued in now because this bike's never been disassembled. It's just muck. It's like a paste. Everything's turned into a paste. That's just going to make everything you're doing more of a hassle. You're going to get dirty. It's going to be tedious. You just got to know this. And even though I know what I'm getting myself into, I could tell by turning this. Terrible. Yeah, let's get that derailleur off. It's just going to be in our way. We got to get this off. And I don't know what size that is, so we'll just use a little adjustable wrench for now. We'll probably just go ahead and cut these cables. Might as well take this off first. Oh my God. It's only because the camera's rolling, you know? This has not been a good day. Look at this. It's incredible. It's incredible. Everything on this bike is glued together with muck just from age. And if I had a little WD-40, I would have sprayed everything down first and then been working on this with gloves and oh my God. I'm letting the camera roll. If you guys see this, I decided to post it, but oh my God. I already want to throw it in the garbage. All right. It's coming along here. That's off. These racks are great, by the way. And listen, you can always modify this to work on the front of a bike as well. You just got to figure it out. I mean, again, I've been doing this literally at least as early as being 8 years old. And back then, when I was a kid, it was a very short seat post. Back when I was a kid, I was doing everything basically with a crescent wrench, a flat blade screwdriver, and a hammer. It's pretty crazy. I wish I have a couple pictures. There's one picture of me where I've got my Schwinn painted hanging from a swing set. That was after I'd spent weeks building another bike that got stolen the next day. And then I had to put together another bike as quick as I could. But back then we weren't taking pictures of everything like we do today. I have way more pictures than a lot of people because even as a kid I was a shutter bug. These brakes are really not good for anything else other than one of these bikes. The 2.8 Schwinn approved brakes, they will work on some forks and frames where you'll still be able to get a fat tire on it. So anyhow, the point is you just want to pull everything off of here, as you see. And it's just, normally I'm in a better mood because I got my music cranking and I'm not trying to do this on camera for anybody. So I'm just getting into a zone. It's one of the things about trying to film something is that everything's going to take a lot longer. Look at how annoying this is just because everything's so dirty. It's just like a crud, and none of these threads are going to come apart clean. That's just the nature of it. Your nut on these stems is always a 1/2 inch. I've never seen one a different size. And there's a little wedge in there that's probably stuck. There we go. Handlebars are loose. I'm going to make this easy on myself. So there's your handlebars and stem. Now, the stem you want to keep, actually the reflector is pretty good. You'd be shocked at the kind of money that people are getting. At least, I don't know what they're getting now, but I was seeing some pretty crazy numbers on these vintage reflectors from the 70s. So you might want to save that stuff and try to sling it on eBay or something. All right. Now, if I was going to keep this bike as far as making it a geared bike when I'm building it into a clunker, one of the things that you can do is you can take your grinder, you can cut this off right here, keep this one, run a new cable, even use the old derailleur, and make that work. And I happen to have a set of wheels. Let's back you out here for a moment. I have a set of matching wheels. Of course, everything here is stacked and falling over. I could put this old mountain bike wheel in here and make that work with that derailleur. This is 7-speed. And I've got a matching front with a quick release on both. And I can run this wheel set, and you can fit up to a 1.75 tire between these chainstays. So you could basically build a geared clunker with some vintage, like early 1980s mountain bike wheels. And these are actually later because they're quick release. And get that thing running and have a 5, 6, 7-speed bike that'll run. And you could be running it with, you know, once you strip down the crankset that came off this frame, this is the exact same thing. This is from a 1974 Schwinn. Keep that inner 39 tooth, your diamond crank, your Varsity pedals, and now you got a geared clunker, which is pretty cool too. It's all going to depend on what you have laying around, what you find, right? I have the wrench for this too, the proper size wrench. We might have to put this in the vise. Let me do that. Stick around. Don't go anywhere. All right. Not everybody's going to have a vise like this, but I use a large crescent wrench. I have a wrench for this. I don't know what I did with it. None of my bike tools are in my bike toolbox. Very strange. All right. Now I have a bunch of these. I don't know what to do with them. I save these arms. You could polish these up, use them for something else. Keep in mind, there are people that want some of this stuff. They're trying to restore old Schwinns, and they're not as fortunate as we are out here in Southern California, where this is abundant stuff, you know. So the head badge on here is good. This entire headset. What I do is I spray them down. I put a little container with some WD-40. I use some 4/0 steel wool, put some rubber gloves on, and just kind of scrub it. Polish it up, wipe it down with a paper towel. I use Lucas Red and Tacky on all my bearings and my coaster brakes. I mean, this stuff is glued in there. It's like varnish. And that's what the big problem is here. So what you want to do now is take all this off of here. And this fork, I probably won't use this fork for anything. I'll put it in the bucket I have up there with a bunch of other forks. But the first thing you have to do is separate the race that's on there, because you want to save that, because that'll work on any 1-inch threaded fork. There's always a better way to do this. I'm just not doing it that way. I should probably take the brake off first. Let me find the appropriate open-end wrench here. All right, I found a little WD-40. Spray this on here. This isn't always that easy to get apart. I mean, especially, like I said, everything's glued on this particular frame. It's just bad luck. I got a bunch of frames down here. I've tried to shoot different segments of this a bunch of times already, and I keep getting interrupted. Anyhow, point is there's a race on here, right here. You want to separate that. It's kind of tedious to get something wedged in there to separate that enough, but it'll pop right off. And you want to keep that together with your bearings and your top race and your top nut and the washer. Right, all these parts here. No. That was for something else. It should all be around here somewhere. There actually wasn't one. That's interesting. So you might run into this. When you take a Varsity apart, sometimes the top washer that goes underneath this cap is not there because this is here. But to do it right, you really should have both. You never know what you're going to find sometimes when you take these apart. But basically now, this frame is stripped. Obviously, I have to pull the front derailleur and this brake here. Not a big deal. There's a lot of parts that are important to hold on to that you can use later when you're building clunkers that you're going to use them in the way that they're not intended for. You're just going to try to make something work. So save everything, right? So as I say that, and something just rolled underneath this machine that now I can't get to. But these little aluminum pieces come in handy for all sorts of things. A lot of these brake parts can come in handy for something else. Especially this section right here, this little nut with the hole in it, excuse me, the screw with that nut, save that because you might be pulling another brake apart where that's ruined or it's missing. Or if it's a female frame, the step through, and it has one of these side pull brakes, these are called caliper or side pull brakes. They pull from the bottom and they don't have the proper setup here, so you need one of these to make one of those brakes work the way this one works. So I'm always pilfering parts, adding parts to other parts, and making stuff happen. You just got to figure that stuff out. This here, you never want to lose this. This is crazy. This screwdriver doesn't even fit in a slot. Today has not been a good day. I mean, I'm still in a relatively good mood. I'm just frustrated. So that little setup right there, that's to run your rear wire, your cable, and the screw for that. These little Schwinn specific parts, they're worth money. Everything is worth money. You can go online and find these things. People are selling these parts. They need these parts to rebuild their bikes. There's a lot of guys that are in the Schwinns that live in the Rust Belt, and everything down there is rusted. So they want this stuff. Oh my God, you gotta be kidding. That's supposed to be a 10 mil too. So, oh, hang on a second here. Maybe it's a 3/8. Yeah. It is not. All right. Wow. I can't win today. I'm telling you, this is, wow. It's so weird with the Schwinn because it's supposed to all be standard, but for some reason on these Varsities, like the nuts on the brakes are 10 mil. This is a 9 mil. Didn't expect that. All right. The only thing left to pull off of this frame would be to knock these bearing cups out down here, the bearing cups up here, and pull the Schwinn head badge, which I'll probably be doing. Now, the paint on this is not good. I mean, I've actually never seen this exact issue where the paint is like, it's like acid got dripped on this or something and went right down to the steel and it's rusted. So what I'll end up doing, I'll tell you typically what I do. I don't have that problem. So what I'll do is I'll spray it down with WD-40 and I'll lightly go over the whole thing with, again, some 4/0 steel wool and then clean it up with some simple green and then some Windex or something, and then I'll clear it. So in this case, what I'll end up doing is I'll end up hitting this with sandpaper so I can get rid of the rust, smooth the whole thing out, and leave as much of the blue on there as I can. It'll give you that kind of patina vibe, you know. And then I clear coat it to make it look nice. Of course, you could spray bomb it with black or some other color, and then you'd have a decent setup here. But that's your frame. That's your clunker frame. So, yeah. As I was saying, all these parts, all these headset parts are good. You could run them in any other frame that's gonna, these vintage frames. This is the head tube on a standard 26-inch cantilever bike. You can see the difference in the size. This one's smaller. So for clunking, if you're going to use the Varsity frame for clunking, you need a decent fork. And there was a ton of forks in mountain bike frames. Oh my God. Nothing is working out for me today. I'm not even going to post this video, I don't think. It's so frustrating. This is a 24-inch frame that has a fork. This fork came off of a Fuji beach cruiser from the 1980s. Same head tube. So I could go ahead and take this tube fork, which is a BMX fork. It's not super heavy duty. And I can mount that on this frame and, you know, go ahead and run some 26-inch wheels. And then if I wanted to run a fatter tire, I would use this tool, right, made by Tick. And I'd pinch the inside of these chainstays thin, so I get a fatter tire on there, and then I'm golden. So stick around, because you're going to see that. If you don't see it now, you're going to see it in the next video. I was going to try to do one video with everything, but it's already been one of those days, and I'm frustrated. I got to clean this stuff up. What you see right now are a bunch of jars that are just full of parts. I mean, these are, I got seat post clamps and bolts, mismatched headsets. I got complete headsets in little containers, washers for wheels. I've got Schwinn head badges. I don't even know how many are. Probably 24 containers up here with organized parts specifically to build out vintage clunkers. I've just been doing it that long. So this rear wheel here, I was just fitting it. It would actually fit. I've got a coaster brake wheel here. It's an aluminum wheel. It's probably nothing special. The thing is this is spaced, right, for a geared hub. And I was just trying to think, like, what's the best way? A lot of people would bend this in, but you're better off leaving this spread and then stacking washers on either side to center this. Or get a piece of pipe that'll work, that would work too, and slice that to the right size to make two shims, basically. I'm going to go ahead and use the Dimpler in a moment here to give myself a little bit more room for this tire on the bottom. And then you guys will see this happen. And I think what I'll do is I'll put this bike together. I wasn't going to do it, but I'll build this bike right now. I'll put the BMX fork on it. I'll grease everything proper. It'll function pretty much like a new bike, although I suspect that coaster brake will have to be rebuilt. No big deal. I won't do it in this video, I don't think. I've probably done it already. I know I've done picture folders and everything else on it. But this is a Shimano. This is a Shimano CBE 110, so pretty standard coaster brake, not one of their high-end ones, but plenty fine. I can take this apart, clean up all the parts, re-grease it, put it back together, and this will function like brand new. I have a matching wheel for it over there. These are some old, I think I brought these back from New Jersey, actually, these wheels. And again, off of a beach cruiser from the 80s. Some old white walls on here. I will build this bike and get it running, and I won't be painting the frame or anything, but I'll offer it up for sale for anybody that wants to buy a a cool clunker. Uh, it'll be several $100, you know. Just I have to be careful about the parts I put on it. If you break this down to the parts and you figure your time and it's already been cleaned up, all the internal parts will be cleaned up. And $500 is not too much money to ask for something like that. And some people will be like, what? That's crazy. It is crazy if you're like me and you have all the parts. I have enough stuff in this room right now. I want you guys to look up here. I got to get rid of this stuff, man. It's too much. There's just buckets of forks, buckets of handlebars. It's insane. It's insane. All the cranks up here. It's crazy. Right above you, there's a rolling 1950-ish. I got to finish building that. I got the twin double straight bar there, like the 62 Schwinn frame. That's a 10-speed mountain bike clunker I was building. I got a 41 straight bar up there. It's insane. It's just, there's too much stuff. More wheels back here. I got a Nexus 7-speed hub right up there with a matching front wheel. I could put that on something. Wheels and fenders all around here. So yeah, it's I will be getting to building more bikes as I have the time to do it. And I'm going to start getting rid of stuff, but I just, yeah. Alright, so I'm just using a little steel wool, 4-ounce steel wool, right on the paint, and some WD-40, and you can see how much nicer this is popping already. And so this is a quick way to make it look okay. Because this Schwinn blue has always been one of my favorites. Knock all the grime. It's just one of the things that is a little bit of a hassle with doing this sort of thing. It's just going to be a dirty job. That's all. You're a man. You're used to it. But if you just take the time to do this first, then you're building everything kind of clean. You know, wipe it all down with paper towels afterwards. Now these races I'm going to leave in place because they'll work with everything. So I'm going to go ahead and get the muck out of it right now with this steel wool. Sometimes, like I said, it's been like varnish in there, so you just take yourself a screwdriver, which I had laying around, keeps everything's disappearing, and then you'll force that in there like that, and that'll get the muck off. And then you just want to polish it. You also want to run your finger in there on these races and feel for a ridge or something, because what happens sometimes is that at some point your bottom bracket loosened up, it was a little wonky and people rode the bike anyhow, and then the bearings drove into these races and they're no longer perfect, and there'll be a problem when you go ahead and try to reassemble. I have just bins and bins and bins of replacement races that I've pulled out of other bikes. Sometimes they're bad too though, so you got to test everything. And I didn't start this till a couple hours ago. I mean, it's already 3 o'clock. If you got into your shop at 7 o'clock in the morning and started doing what I was doing and weren't talking to a camera, you know, by early afternoon, you got a bike together and working. Might not be pretty, might not win any awards at a show or something, but, you know, this isn't a Cook Brothers, you know. And those things are crazy overpriced anyhow, man. I got friends that ride them, and it's cool, but I don't even entertain that thought, man. It's just too crazy when you think about the numbers on those things. And, you know, the really neat thing is that for people that know what they're looking at, when they see something like this rolling by, even with inexpensive parts on it, but if they're kind of period correct, this gets a lot of attention. It'll get a lot of attention once it's rolling. And the idea here, it's like everything else, right? You get it rolling with what you got, and then, hey, man, you save your shekels, right? So all of a sudden, next thing you know, you got some money, and maybe you find a set of old Araya 7X hoops off of a mountain bike or something, and you've got your hubs that you took off of this, and you could have a freewheel you know, the Schwinn wide flange hubs and have them laced into an old mountain bike aluminum Araya 7X wheel. And little by little, you put a 4-bolt stem on this thing, and yeah, next thing you know, man, you're golden. Let me go ahead and figure out the stacking of the washers. A little tip on that: stack your washers, figure out how much you need for the spacing, and wrap some electrical tape around them, and then they become. Was there none of that on camera? I was over here the whole time talking to you, and you weren't even seeing me. Stack your washers, wrap some electrical tape around it, and you'll end up with 2 little nice shims that won't just fall apart on you. Alright, so this wheel actually kind of fits. It's hitting a little bit. The rim itself is a little bit out of true. I could fix that. But we're still going to go ahead and dimple. The reason I wanted to mount it, and just so you know, it took 4 washers on either side, so I didn't have to bend this in. Then I'm going to take a marker, and I'm going to mark inside the chainstays here, right about where the tire hits. And that's where I know I got to do my dimpling. We'll try to show this to you on camera. One quick tip here, I probably forgot. On the cables that you pull off these Varsities, these aluminum inserts that the cable housing goes into, save these. These are very important when you're building a Schwinn again. They come in handy on a lot of different bikes because these things fit inside these little spots here, and that's the cable stop that I just dropped. I got a whole bunch of them, but you always want to save these and put them in a little container together so you know where to find them and stay organized. Tons of parts that you're pulling off this frame you can use. Alright, so the wheel's there. You can see, you might be able to see on camera, I marked it with some marker here. Pull this wheel. Par for the course today. Okay, so it's a hardened piece of steel here. I don't know how Chad got this part. If he had somebody make it for him, I don't know what the story is. This has a piece of leather on it. You put on the outside to protect the paint. Set this thing in here. Run these bolts in. Get them threaded. You know that old saying, music soothes the common beast? That's why I listen to music all the time. That and the tinnitus, you know. All right. So once you get this thing set like this, your next step is to just start cranking down on this evenly, as even as you can do it. Now, by hand, that's not going to work, right? What you want to do is you want to get your large crescent wrench on here. And get to getting. And this is how you make the space in your chainstays to fit a fatter tire. I'll try to zoom in on that for you. See if you can actually, I can't see what you see. You might be able to see that pipe bending. I can see it. And it's kind of just a guessing game in a way of just getting this, both of these relatively in the same spot. You're going to eyeball it, and then you're going to go ahead and switch it to the other side. And that probably already is good enough. Keep in mind, you might remember now, you saw it with the wheel in there. And I could have trued that wheel enough to where it would have spun in here anyhow. All right. Couple more cranks on this side. We'll take this off and then we'll be able to compare. You guys will be able to see what it looks like. All right. Let's call that good. I can always redo it, all right? I can move this up or down to make a longer dimple. I don't think I'm going to need to do that on this one. But if I do, I'll do it. It's not a big deal. And by the way, he used SAE Allen heads on this instead of metric. So it took me another minute or so to figure that out and find the appropriate size. You can see here that dimple there. It wouldn't be a bad idea for me to go ahead and move this up and pinch that right here a little bit more. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and put it on this side and dimple that, and then I'll show it to you with the wheel in. All right, there you have it. So I just did the two dimples, and you can see that we're golden here. So I'm going to go ahead and fit the front fork. And stem and bars, I'll find a crank set up here. And we're just going to basically kind of get this set up as a roller so you guys can see what it looks like. It's going to look pretty cool. I'll have to break it down. I'll have to do the coaster brake and other parts and everything else. But I just want to quickly show you how cool this thing could look. And it's something you could do in half a day if you have all the proper stuff. This tool is something you'd have to make yourself. All right. So leather glued in there. It's threaded. This is the hard part right there. But that's a dimpling tool. So if you got that, you can take these old frames and do this, and it's pretty easy. We clean these cups out on the front, fit the fork, fit the front tire, put some air in that, stand it up and show you how cool this is going to be. Okay, so on this particular fork, the race that came off the Schwinn fork, it won't fit. So I have to use the race that was on this fork, which means the bottom bearing has to be a bearing race that'll work on that particular one and also fit up in the cups here. So, and that's not the one. But the top part will all be Schwinn, and then the bottom bearing on this won't be. But it's a vintage set, and it'll be okay. Alright, so what I did here is I basically have it as a roller right now. And I think it looks pretty good. I've got to retain the original seat and pedals. Put the BMX fork on it off that Fuji Cruiser. This is a Sidewinder stem bars combo, the Schwinn Sidewinder. gooseneck, old school Schwinn gooseneck, Ashtabula. Period correct wheels, really, from the 80s. The crankset and everything is all GT. I found that. And, you know, there's no chain or anything. Nothing is greased. But just so you can kind of see how it fits me. It's perfect size for me. I might keep these bars and everything. I was just thinking, too, the last time I built, I remember, I gave the guy a deal. I sold him the last build I did on this size frame was $750 is what I sold that for. This is going to be cooler, nicer when I'm done with it. I'll take the coaster brake apart, repack that, build all that up, do the front hub, add grease. This bearing situation's not correct. I got a little wiggle in it. It's fine. I'll sort that. I'll get the right bearing to work in there. Might change the fork. I do have mountain bike forks from the period that I like. I'll show them to you later. They have bosses on them, though, for like cantilever brakes. And if I did that, I suppose I could run some vintage cantilever brakes on there as well for a front brake. I'll include some stills on this. If I can find some stills off my Instagram page from the last one I built, because I had 2 green single gears coaster brakes that I built from this size frame, Schwinn Varsities. And then I had another one that I had built up as a mountain bike. I sold that one. I think I got like $1,500 for that one. But that one was geared and dialed nice. I had a really nice Mongoose, early Mongoose mountain bike frame, chromoly fork on there. But yeah, that's it. I think there's a 44 tooth. And I probably have an 18 on there. And that's what the fellas cruise on down at the beach, because you can pull wheelies on it and everything pretty easy. For me, I prefer the 16 tooth sprocket and get a little more speed that way. But it's up to you. You could do this if you have everything here and you're not trying to film it. You're not being frustrated like I was early in this video. I hope you got a laugh out of that. I have got to get out of here. It's after 4 o'clock already. And I got to clean all this mess up. But yeah, stick around. There's going to be some stills here. Don't go anywhere. It's so much fun to do this, really. I forgot how cool it is. Let me walk you around the bike real quick. So it's got a vintage Diacomp blue brake lever on there now. Not sure if I'd keep that. I don't like running these. I prefer a mountain bike lever because these flex. Reduces your stopping power. You'll notice on a stem like this that has this pinch, you need the pinch here on the crossbar, or else you can't get a handlebar on that type of stem. I can run a 4-bolt stem and an old set of motorcycle handlebars on here as well. Badge looks real nice. And that paint, even though it looked horrible in the beginning, it doesn't look that bad now. That's just a little steel wool. And some WD-40. Electro-forged head tube. That seat actually looked cleaned up really well. Just some WD-40 and a paper towel.